You are listening to the Billy D's podcast.
If you've never checked out the program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. You can find the Billy D's podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. And I got to tell you, we're live tonight, live on Friday night. This is October 14th. And I enjoy doing the live stuff. It has a certain energy that I really enjoy. What we are going to talk about today, this question is hardly a unique topic. And that is, how do you define success? And it's one that gets bantered about. And I don't know that there's a definitive answer to it, but it's come up a number of times in my social circles, whether it be at work or with friends. And it's amazing the takes that I get on this. It's actually pretty interesting. Now, I did a little, a quick little search online, and I came up with some interesting guidelines. A lot of times success can be associated with something that makes you happy and that makes you enjoy. And according to this one explanation here, it also means not necessarily following the path of least resistance, but doing something that challenges you and makes you a more well-rounded individual. Now, I kind of like that one. Success is often associated with motivation, in terms of what motivates you, what gets you out of bed in the morning. That's a pretty good one too. And another one here is being successful is doing what you love and being authentic while you do it. And, I kind of believe that's an important one too. There's a lot of little sayings out there, fake it until you make it. And I'm not so sure that that's a good thing to do. I can tell you, here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give you my little personal journey, because I kind of feel, and this is something that I don't hear brought up too often, that a lot of times what means success can evolve as you mature. And that's a big one. Because when I was younger, my attitude about what success was is completely different than what it is now. And I know a lot of people have a tendency to bring spirituality into this, and that's fine. Okay, that's here again. Everybody has their own personal truth when it comes to their outlook about life. I've often said there's 7 point something or other billion people on this earth. And no matter what religion we all have, when it comes right down to it, we have 7 billion little religions on the earth. We all modify even the religion that we subscribe to, so to speak, to kind of fit our own little niche about what we feel life is. I could take 20 people of any denomination and ask them a series of questions, and I guarantee you I would have 20 little religions, 20 little customized versions of what life is all about. And that's fine. And I think we all have to respect that more in each other. And a lot of times, we always talk about freedom of speech and freedom of religion or not. And one of the things that I always say is, as long as you agree with me, right? And I try not to be that way, but I can tell you that there's really no definitive way I can bring spirituality into this in a way that's going to resonate with everyone. Everyone is going to have a different feeling about it, and that's fine. For me, I bring a certain practicality into it in terms of how we face the real world and the physical world. Okay, here again, I'm not saying that there's anything unreal about beliefs. I'm just saying the physical world, the one that we know is there, the one we have to deal with every day, and the people around us and how we impact their lives. That has been for me what has changed as this journey has gone along for me. When I was younger, I kind of got off to, I don't want to say a rough start, because there were people out there who had it far worse than I did. But when I was 18 years old and I was in high school, my father died. And he died, as a matter of fact, I went to my dad's funeral in the morning, and I went to my high school commencement that same night. And Dad and I had a strained relationship. That's another topic for another day. But I can tell you that I kind of lost my direction. I didn't have that discipline, and I really could have used that discipline for another solid year until I was 18 or 19, 20 years old, something like that. But I didn't. And I actually went out into the business world at a very young age. I went to school for a fairly long time, but I got sidetracked, I guess you could say, with some business aspirations. And I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse. I've come to believe that it was somewhat of a curse, but early success kind of happened quick. And I kind of believe that it was always going to be that easy, that it was always that easy to start a business and be successful. And for me, I wasn't like, one of these people that pretend to be leaders of the free world with all my money. I wasn't that, but I was self-sufficient. I didn't have to work as an employee for another company until I was well into my 30s. That didn't start to change. My career path didn't start to change until I was well into my 30s. And during my 20s, I very much felt that success was built around being financially independent, and being financially independent very well. And I could afford, some basic things, a new car and other things. And that kind of tied in, and this is part of the immaturity. It kind of tied into my ability to attract women. And I was never one of these guys that I always had to have a knockout blonde on my arm. I wasn't one of those. I was never that shallow. But I was one of those guys that felt that my worth, my value, was tied into being financially successful, being physically attractive, being physically fit. And that's kind of where I was for a fairly long time. And I was raised around alpha men. My dad was certainly one of those. And a lot of my cousins, a lot of my uncles and people on both sides of the family were very much rough and tumble individuals. And I always kind of admired the what's the word I'm looking for here? The attitude that there was nothing that was going to get in their way. There was nobody that was going to intimidate them. And there was nobody that, was going to push them around. And that was here again, an ideal that very much factored into my view as a successful person. Now, I actually, I don't want to get political here. I don't necessarily feel that being an alpha male and all these other things is a bad thing, but it has to be done at the right time. It's just like anything else, in the right measure. I can tell you that the loss of the powerful father figure for me at a very young age, when I was still developing into an adult, even though I was technically a young adult, 17, 18 years old, I didn't have that level of maturity that I needed. And a strong hand in my presence was basically a good thing, something that I needed. But here again, you have to balance it. And my dad was too much of a good thing. And quite honestly, too much of a good thing. I do agree that there comes a time. One of the most, to me, as somebody who aspires to humanity, one of the greatest things, one of the most powerful creatures is a big, strong, powerful man who knows when to be sensitive, who can lift you up when you are down. And I kind of believe that, it's one or the other in our society now. The alpha male is one thing, and for better or for worse, everybody argues about that. And then you have the sensitive guy, that's held up like the ideal a lot of times. But quite frankly, it's just like with anything else. You have to take it in the right dose. You have to take it in the right measure. And I've matured on that now. Okay. I know now that, being a sensitive person is very much part of being a successful person. I don't know that I would want to be around somebody who is successful financially and doesn't have any concern for the feelings of someone else. I don't believe that that is a good thing. So now, as I've gotten older, what does it mean to be successful? I can tell you, I have found a new career path here in the last 10 years, even though I'm still involved with media and I'm still involved with electronics, and I love all that stuff. And that's something to be passionate about. I believe everybody should have a hobby, whether it's skiing or whatever, something that brings you fulfillment of joy, and something that brings you fulfillment and joy is something that can make you, in terms of self-care, a better person to be successful and share that success with other people. So I get enjoyment from electronics. I get enjoyment from doing media, but I've also, that's part of what feeds me as an individual. But I've also recognized now, as I've gotten involved here recently in the last 10 years, more and more with nonprofits, especially in the fields of mental health and addiction and some of these other things. Being from Ohio, these have been chronic problems. And I'll spare you all the details, but if you want to follow an interesting story, there's some documentaries and there's some good things that you can find online about how Ohio became one of the hotbeds for the addiction problem across the country. And it's a pretty interesting story how that all evolved. But nonetheless, we got here and we're still dealing with it. And there's a lot of people who have been in situations now with their family. They dealt with problems that they never would have imagined that they would have had to deal with 10 years ago. A lot of my friends have children that are young adults, and they were getting to the point in their lives where they kind of figured, okay, my kids are grown, I can relax and do some things. And now all of a sudden they're caregivers again. Some bad things have happened to them. And it's a very sad thing to be around. And it teaches you compassion when it happens to you, when it happens to people around you. And that's something that I believe here in Ohio, we have a lot more compassion for the path to addiction. We have a lot more compassion for how it has impacted mental health, because quite frankly, there's hardly anybody in Ohio who doesn't know somebody either firsthand or secondhand who has been on this journey. And I kind of believe, my professional life for most of it has been involved in some sort of sales, and either facilitating sales as one of the people in the background as a marketing specialist or what have you. And those gauges are often measured every 90 days. Where are the sales at? And I want to be very clear here. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying anything bad about the for-profit sector. Okay. It is vital to our economy, to have a strong dollar, to have a strong economy that in and of and by itself benefits everyone. But I believe the stereotype that we have a successful business owner and he doesn't care about his employees, and that stereotype isn't really true. I've been around some for-profit individuals, very successful business people who cared about their employees, especially in the early days of their business. I know a couple of them that actually had some sleepless nights where they weren't sure how they were going to make payroll that week. And one of them actually had to put payroll on a MasterCard. And he did it because he didn't want to let his employees down. He knew that those people depended on that paycheck and they were loyal to the company. And that's the side of business ownership that you don't hear about too much. It's not a mutually exclusive thing, that you can be driven for financial success and you can also be an ethical individual. Those two things are often separated in our pop culture. The business guy, like the Wolf of Wall Street, he has, he'll do anything to make a buck. Okay. And that's not what a lot of business owners are like. Nonetheless, though, success in a lot of these things was built on quarterly growth. It was built on all these other things. And selling electronics and all those other things, because I had a passion for it, it was fulfilling in that regard. But now that I have gotten involved with helping these nonprofits, and I here again, I'm not selling something. When you work for a nonprofit agency, especially in the healthcare industry, a lot of people say, "What do you need a marketing department for?" Because there's always health problems, right? There's always health problems. That's true. That's true. But what you really have to do when you are marketing for that type of organization is you have to raise awareness. Okay. Like, for example, the stigma around mental health, the stigma around addiction. This was something in the early days of the crisis here in Ohio was a major problem. Okay. I remember when I went to certain events and I had a clinician with me with Narcan, people went nuts. I mean, they just were, we don't need that around here. These are all good people. And you would have to explain to them why the path to addiction isn't as simple as just partying all the time. It's very much tied into mental health. And we would have to explain to them how the pill mill whole thing evolved 20 years ago here in Ohio. And so many people, especially with heroin, I've gotten involved with some of the court systems here and some of the research that they have done with heroin addiction in Ohio is that it's close to 80% of the people that make their way through the legal system with some sort of an issue with heroin have a history of child abuse. So we really had to bring this to light. And that's important for two reasons. Number one, you have to have support in the community because nonprofits, it's not about making money, but you have to make sure the lights come on. Right? You have to make sure that when your clinicians come into the building, you flip the lights on, that they come on. So you do have to have a certain amount of sustainability. A lot of the clients that nonprofits deal with don't have a way to pay, whether it be through insurance or whatever. So you have to have a staff that helps people find the resources that are available and all of these other things. And here again, that comes a lot of times with help from grants. So you have to make sure people in the community, in the business community, are aware of the problem, for one, and they are aware of what you are doing. That's part of what you do when you are marketing for a nonprofit cause. And the other thing is that the general public, because of the fact that we had such a knee-jerk reaction in the early days to what was happening with the epidemic here in Ohio, was because the public didn't understand it. It hadn't impacted them yet, and maybe they didn't know that it did, but it was already, the bubbling was already occurring, right? So this sometimes impacts things that are put to a vote. And there's a lot of things in the nonprofit sector that are subsidized by governmental funds. And if you don't have people in the area that understand what is happening, that's a problem because you don't get support for the things that you need to get done. So that's kind of where my role came into working with these nonprofits. And there's roughly a half a dozen of them, okay, that I've really gotten involved with. 3 in particular that I deal with pretty much on a regular basis. So with that being said, and I work for one of them. So what happened there was I started to talk to clinicians. We would go to these events a lot of times where we would celebrate, the victories of people who have overcome addiction, have overcome their mental health issues and other things. And there would be families there. And these clinicians would come up to me and they would point out certain people in the crowd, introduce me to some. And these people would be with their children. And they would say, if it wasn't for our services, these children may not have their parents. They may not have their father. They may not have their mother. And you start to realize that there's something happening there in terms of humanity that's bigger than just selling cool things. And not that there's anything wrong with that. But as I got older, I started to really appreciate the fact that when I go home, I'm helping facilitate these people who are, quite frankly, working for a wage that they could do better in the private sector, but they chose what they are doing because they believe in the mission. And you are helping people facilitate saving people's lives, changing people's lives, making sure that children have their family members to grow up with. And in that sense, I've started to realize that success can mean just helping your fellow person. It's a different feeling. Going home and judging that instant that I just described at one of those picnics or one of those events, as opposed to what our increase was for the last quarter. It's a completely different feeling. And I would encourage all of you, if you have time, and we all have busy lives, we have to pay the bills and we have families and other things. But, as opposed to, and this is my opinion, I'm not a big sports person to begin with, as opposed to going somewhere and watching a bunch of millionaires bounce a rubber ball up and down a floor, go to your local, find out what's going on in your community for these outreach programs for the homeless or some of these shelters. Do they need donations? Do they need, packages of diapers for the women that come in there who don't have homes and they have small babies? When you start to realize that this is making a difference in people's lives, success starts to, especially at my age, and not that I'm horribly old, but I'm not 21 anymore. There's something about the life that you feel in other human beings that is different when you're doing that kind of work. It's a different kind of success. So that's kind of my little spiel on that. And I do have some people that want to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in one of the people here. And they're going to be in here in about 1 second. Here they are. Do I say your name as Mojo? Is that correct?
Mojo's good. I'll go with that.
Okay. Is that kind of like, a Doors reference, Mr. Mojo Filter or something?
No, it's not, but I know that's the first thing that comes to mind for most people, especially in our generation.
Yes, yeah. Yes. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, Mojo. Where are you from?
I'm from Orange County, California.
Oh, yeah, Orange County, California. Wow. Thank you very much for coming into the Wisdom Talk today. And I presume you heard what I said. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah. By the way, Billy, we've spoken before, and I think very highly of your thoughtfulness and the way you articulate yourself, your commitment to bringing something of value, and especially when it comes to mental health. So thank you for what you're doing here. It's very important, and I appreciate everything that you've brought so far that I've heard anyway. Well,
thank you. I got to tell you, though, some of the providers that I know who, like I said, are working for less money than what they would work for in the private sector, who are helping people a lot of times who don't realize that you're trying to help them. They can resent these providers, and these people are doing, I'll say this, like God's work. I mean, that's Absolutely. A very tough environment to be in. Yeah, and I'm 100%. Glad that I can help them, but they're the ones on the front lines. Thank you so much for your comments. So please continue.
Yeah, well, what you're doing, by the way, is bringing to the conscious awareness of the rest of us what those frontline workers are doing. So what you do is vital as well, because many of them toil in obscurity, and I'm sure, questioning whether it's all worth it. But those are definitely angels on this earth that are anybody who's in a service industry. I worked in nonprofits my entire life, and so I never got paid what I could have made out in the corporate world. But for me, so this goes right to your question about success, right? So for me, the idea of working for $1 never really was compelling enough. I wanted to work for significance, for purpose, for meaning. And so I think the people that you're describing who are giving something of value, trying to save lives, actually, and for people who don't understand what they're doing, who aren't necessarily grateful for it even, and yet sticking with that. So I was in the nursing care facility with my mother-in-law this last week, who's recuperating from hip surgery. And there was another patient, probably in her 80s, I'm guessing, sitting in a wheelchair. And she was just berating the staff up and down, the staff who are super kind. They're very conscientious. They're
Yeah.
very helpful. And she was, maybe not necessarily fully in her right mind, but she was, just giving them all sorts of grief. And all they were trying to do is respond in kindness to make her life a little bit better, considering, she doesn't want to be there. Who wants to be in a skilled nursing facility, right? At the end of your life. And
Sure.
my heart was just going out in all sorts of positive vibes to this staff of generally young professionals who have committed themselves to making life better for people who are not able to enjoy life the way most of us do. And there was one particular guy in the facility who's probably maybe 20, and he's already committed his life to nursing. He's in here getting his hours in. He's going to go to nursing school, and he's changing the soiled diapers of people in their 80s, who have very little left other than their dignity. Even that's being questioned every day, and he does it with grace. He does it with a great attitude. He isn't complaining, at least not as far as I've ever seen. He shows up, does his job professionally, and you can tell that he has compassion,
Yeah.
compassion for people who, and he's not making a lot of money, so he's not doing it for the money. So I think this ties in to your question about success, that success for me really is significance. That what I do, what I say, how I show up, the work that I produce, whatever I create, does it have an impact on at least one life to make them feel better, less pain? Does it alleviate suffering in some way? Does
Mhm.
it provide some sort of inspiration or enthusiasm, or maybe gratitude or grace, or maybe all four of those things? I just find that those four ingredients, enthusiasm, inspiration, gratitude, and grace, are the recipe for a successful day, or even a successful moment. And
Yeah.
life is made of this string of moments and days that turn into weeks, into months, into years. And so I am embracing now, in my 50s, the idea that success really is more about significance, and it's not what I take with me that matters, it's what I leave behind.
Yeah. That's a great attitude there. And I don't know why, but even as some people age, a lot of my friends, they still have not matured. And I don't know. I was talking to one here not too long ago, and I had recently was talking about a vehicle that I had purchased. And I told him I don't like spending money, and it was nerve wracking and all that. And he said, "Well, I just did the same thing about 6 months ago, except it was for twice the money." And and he was with his wife, so I kept my mouth shut. But I almost said, "Okay, your truck is bigger than my truck." Okay,
Right,
that's what you want
exactly.
me to say.
It's just a pissing contest at that point. Who can piss higher on the fence, right?
Yeah, exactly. So do you run across that, and does it frustrate you?
Well, all the time, and I think I try to have compassion and empathy even for the people who are, trying to do the comparison and the win loss thing. But I'm really, and I'm sure that that was me 20 years ago, 30 years ago, of course, because generally we come out of college full of this lot of testosterone, at least for me, and I'm going
Hmm.
to impact the world, and I'm going to make change, and I'm going to be a big shot, or whatever my ambitions were at the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of that flows out, or shows up in this competition. Do I have more than? Am I better than? Or worse than? But you and I both know, over time, that eventually the whole comparison gig, the win loss equation, that's fruitless, right? I mean, in every aspect of my life, there are people who are way better and people who are way worse. But the only person I should be comparing myself with is me. Am I showing up as the best possible version of me? And if not, well, then I apply grace, right? And if I am, I apply gratitude. But really, success is about, I think, is success is about growth, and it's not about comparison. It's not about competition. It's not about win loss. And this is something that can come to us as we mature. But as you stated very clearly, not everybody gets that. Some people never do.
Yeah. You are so right. And I here again, I'm not saying that I'm a saint, because I'm certainly not. But when it comes to compassion, you either have it or you don't. It's just like anything else. When a singer, you can be coached to sing, and you can have a coach make you a better singer, but you either have it. They did that it factor, right? You either have it or you don't. And that's I've noticed that's true with compassion. There are some people who are just naturally compassionate people. And it doesn't always, here again, the stereotype is that, well, if they're rich, they're not going to be. But that's not necessarily the case. I've known,
right.
Here again, working in the community as much I have, I can tell you that good and bad people come in equal measures. They come from all different,
Yes, sir.
also
That's right.
different social brackets,
Yep.
There's just some people that have it, and some people don't. And I really wish that there was more of that. I don't know if I'll ask you this. We still have about 6 minutes here with you.
Sure.
Do you think social media, because social media gets the blame all the time for people becoming so polarized and so indifferent? They're all in their own little bubbles. And do you think that social media is to blame, or has social media just exposed something that was already there?
So I've got a little different take on this, and this comes out of my reflection on the documentary "The Social Dilemma." This came out on Netflix years ago, yeah, and
yes.
They were talking to the creators behind social media and the algorithms and the business model and all that. It was all very fascinating. But what I took out of that, and not on the first pass, but as I was thinking back, I was thinking, the AI, the robots, the supercomputers that are serving up social media to us as consumers, they're really doing it based on our own user preferences. So if we spend more time or we slow down on a certain post or a certain picture or whatever we're searching for, that is just basically informing the computer of what we're looking for. And so it serves us more of that, primarily to keep our eyeballs there longer so that it could serve more ads, because that's how the money is made, right?
Right.
And
sure.
and I heard the creators of this saying, we've created a monster, and now the supercomputers, which can think faster and more complex than the human brain even, and it's aware of our psychology, it's using it against us, all this type of thing. At first, I felt kind of like overwhelmed and like, well, there's no hope, right? But then I realized that the robots, the AI behind all of this, that serves up all the social media to each of us, it can be polarizing if we keep telling the computers based on our usage what we're looking for. So if I'm looking for an argument that only says what I believe and only what I think and bolsters all of my worldview and puts down everybody else's worldview, I'll keep getting more and more and more of that and believe that I am right. And then it becomes that same equation, right versus wrong. I win, you lose, and I'm better or worse. But I say, okay, if that's the way it works, if that's just the basics behind the way it works, then we actually have the power, Billy, and everybody else does. We have the power to hack the system. And I saw John, I can't think of his last name. John starts with a K. He was an actor from The Office, Krasinski. And he started on his own. He started this little broadcast studio out of his home called Some Good News, SGN, the SGN network. And he just solicited videos and posts from people around the world that just posted something good, something simple but loving and kind or whatever, and got these posts and had them all hashtagging it. Well, as it turned out, that really went viral. Like people, a lot of people really want good news, right? And it wasn't highly produced. It wasn't super fancy. It was just everyday people posting and tagging the good things that were going on in their life. And it just grew. It grew so much that CNN actually either purchased it or at least offered to purchase that whole network from John that he built out of his home because of the impact and the traction and the virality of the whole thing. And that's when all this clicked for me, this connection that the computers are amoral. They don't have an ethical filter. They don't know what's good, bad. All they know is what we watch, and they give us more of that, which is actually kind of the way the world works, right? That we create the world that we pay attention to. So if we consciously choose to pay attention to what's good, what's beautiful, what's kind, what's loving, what is helpful, then actually that's what the world serves back to us. And even on social media, the AI who doesn't make any judgments just gives us more of what we want to see. So we actually have the power, both in our personal lives and on social media, to hack the system by paying attention to all the best parts of life, all the best parts of humanity. And as we pay attention to those, we actually create more of it.
Well, that's fantastic. I wish it would work that way more often. I think a lot of people really need to hack the system, so to speak, the way you said, and start taking the path that and I would go so far to say sometimes what you said about how the system is built to pattern us for things that we like, I think that's the problem, because and I've talked about this before, whereas news at one time was a public service. You had to listen. The broadcast companies didn't like giving the news. It was something that they were required to do as a public service. Right. So before you could watch somebody get a pie in the face, you had to sit through a half hour of the news. And the public was exposed to news that was just the news, whether they liked it or not. Now, after news has become a ratings game, it's how can we shape the news to make it palatable to our audience. So sometimes what I would say in response to that is the best way to hack the system is to go the uncomfortable route. Listen to somebody that you don't like and really hear them, not just hear the words. But that's a great message, Mojo. I really appreciate you coming in. Always great insights. I've recognized you from talking to you before. Thank you so much. It's such a value you bring. Thank you so much.
So I just want to highlight a profound bomb you just dropped, Billy. You said the way we hack the system is by taking the uncomfortable action. That is exactly right. That's not just true in social media. That's true in everything we do. If we are able to consciously make the decision to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, because no growth ever happens in the comfort zone, even though that's where we tend to end up, then we can expand our mind, our hearts, and we can actually change the world one little choice at a time.
Thank you so much. Obviously, great commentary. Thank you so much, Mojo, for coming. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to you, but you timed that perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. Here comes an old friend. She's going to be in here in just a moment. Her name is Melanie. Melanie, how are you?
Oh, thank you. I love the topic. If I may, I would like to discuss how I define success.
Absolutely.
I think that success is tailor-made. I don't think there is a template for what is successful. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think we as individuals define what is successful. Although we have the power to make decisions for us, I believe that society does have some clear definitions about what's successful, and it's usually intertwined with monetary value.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example, and I'm okay to share it. It's not like I chose. I'm in the helping professions. I've worked. I have my degree in psychology, and I also do applied behavior analysis with children with autism. So I worked in hospitals and mental health fields, and actually now I work in the school system with children with autism. And I analyze behavior. I mean, for all day, I don't get a break. I am taking data on behavior, figuring out what's maintaining it, figuring out how to change it, all that stuff.
Right.
I'll tell you today, I don't care if I do anything this weekend. My whole weekend was made. My client that I was working with in, I think, 21 days for the first time just said my name and asked me where something was. And that to me just gave me all the affirmation I needed. Like, I'm just one of those people that, like, you could have handed me whatever check, and it wouldn't have been as fulfilling as this child who finally found their voice. And I believe that because I am like their shadow, I played an integral part in that. Now, as I don't believe that I chose, look, nobody chooses helping professions. And because I believe, like there's no greater professions where people put their life on the line, to help, ensure our safety. So like,
Right.
I love EMTs and, police officers and firemen. I mean, so much. But I think people are just born helpers. Like I was always a nurturer, playing with dolls, fixing them up, stuff like that. And I have a sister, and she owns, without going into it, she has a company in Manhattan and all that kind of stuff. And she was born motivated by money. I mean, I remember she would play with cash registers, and my mom would get her
Yeah.
out like deposit slips and stuff, and I was playing with dolls. So I don't feel but the thing is I feel successful when I help other people. But I think society determines what's successful because, I mean, look at the disparity. It's like you pay people who do such crucial work. And it's like, I feel like if you want to make a difference, you can't make a living. And no offense, but if you want to make a living, then you don't really make a difference. And you know what? The whole COVID time, it taught us that. It was the only time we were awakened enough to say, our essential workers, who were they? The business people. And I felt terrible for them. I have a very big heart, and I understand people that are not of my same social class. And I can see that they were hurting. But the people who are essential are the people that we undervalue and we undercompensate. These were people who kept our supermarkets open, who actually volunteered their help. During that time, I worked for the Red Cross. I volunteered my time because I knew we needed blood. It's just that I do not disrespect or undervalue people who, are more motivated by money and go that route. But I think that people who are in that need to look back and say, we are doing crucial jobs, So, and a lot of times, like, while you're going and making a lot of money at your business job, I'm taking care of your child for the majority of the day while you're doing that. So I just think that there's just this disparity of what we see. Although we recognize that it's essential, we're not at that point where we're ready to compensate it as it should be. But to me, success is helping someone else, because at the end of my life or whatever, I'm not going to look back at all the things that I've acquired or what's in my bank. I'm going to look at all the lives that I've touched and, the children that have grown, because that's what makes me feel successful. Along that lines, like you said, with the social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm finding that, I do believe, and I saw I don't know if you saw the Netflix special, like The Social Network.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of psychology behind it, and that's what I found intriguing. See, the thing is, and I find this in real life and on social media, is people think I'm competing with them, like a person at school or whatever, but I'm not. Like, really, I understand people that are trying to start businesses and they want people to follow them and promote them. And I'm all about support and everything, but I'm kind of just on here. I love good conversations. I'll show up for a good conversation and stuff like that. But there are people that are on here, just for the pleasure of it, to laugh at funny dog videos or memes, But
Yeah.
like, it's funny because and I appreciate you reposting the trending thing. Oh my God, I called up my best friend of 50 years. I said, Ray, do you believe I'm trending? I said, I don't even know what trendy is. I've never been trendy a day in my life. What does that mean? I'm trending. Like, it's just fun for me. It was a hoot. It was fun for me. And that was all. But you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I cared because it was something I never did before. If I went, not like I would, but if I ever went like bungee jumping or something, I put myself out there, good for me for making myself vulnerable. And it was funny to me, to be quite honest. Yeah. So what people are searching for in success, and maybe in that arena or other ones, I'm just like, it's just fun and it's funny.
Sure. Absolutely. And that's a good way to approach social media. And I want to keep you on it as long as you want to stay. We got about another 6 minutes with you here in some seconds. I will throw this back at you, though. I would like to hear your response to this. Yes, it is true that people can sometimes use social media for just superficial things to have fun, the cat videos and all these other things. And that's great. That's wonderful. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But here is the problem. Because of the fact that people spend so much time on social media, it now has defaulted into the way that they get their news. You know, the statistics on this, study after study, is showing that people are going to Facebook, they're going to Twitter, they're going to these other places to be informed on current events because that's where they're at. You know, they're there looking at the dog videos and little Joey's bar mitzvah or whatever. And while they're there, there's a news story there. And that news story has been designed to be there. It has an inclination to appeal to them because it's been engineered that way by their prior habits, so that they're likely to check it out. And when they check it out and it reinforces what they already believe, that's why they stay there. That's why they use that as their source of information. And it creeps in on you in that way. So that's, to me, the bigger issue with this is people cannot separate entertainment from social media, and in terms of what is entertainment mixed with the news so that they like it. That's the juggernaut. What would you say to that?
What would I say? That like interspersing entertainment within the news?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that that's called an establishing agent. In psychology, an establishing agent is like, if you go to a bar and a bartender puts like salty peanuts, on there, it will, make you buy more drink or whatever. Yeah. So it's like, if there's news that you want to see, they will intersperse, entertainment along it, because the entertainment reinforces you to go back to the source where the news is.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's like trying to get a kid into a candy store and like putting a piece of candy in front, or a dog, you're trying to make them come to you, bringing that treat. So yeah, so they want people to see the news. So that is it's the establishing agent. It's what makes them, go forward. It entices them. But let me tell you something, even if I go, and I only came to Twitter, I was off social media for 2 years because it wasn't entertaining to me. I actually, I'll tell you, I had the social anxiety, the FOMO. I don't know who put that out there, fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. So I got off of Facebook and I got off of Instagram, especially during the pandemic, because I just, I felt I was alone. I live alone, and I saw these people, getting gatherings and everything. And I said, enough with it. And I was happy. But to be honest with you, 100% honest, I went on to Twitter because A, I knew nobody there, and B, I need to be able to get on, like, to see what my company is up to, or like if there's school closings, or I like to see things with the kids. But when I am on there and I'm scrolling and news things pop up, that's one thing. And if I like something of somebody's or whatever, and they may have, and they're promoting their career, and I get it, but then I don't think people, maybe it's just me, there's a counteractive effect. Like, just because I like you and you're promoting something, I don't want to keep getting these, like, come to me, because to be honest, I work a full day and I'm coming there for entertainment or to see what's up with the news. And now I'm trying to make myself successful, and now I have to make someone else successful. And to me, it's a deterrent. I'm being honest with you.
Sure. That's an interesting point of view. I really like that. But I like what you said about, the salted peanuts being there. Well, where I was going with you in the final moment was that you do bring a value. And that's part of the best way to be on social media, is not so much trying to get followers, but just bringing value. You always bring value. I always enjoy hearing from you. And I really appreciate you coming in the Wisdom Talk today. Thank you so much, Melanie.
Thank you as well, Billy. Have a nice night.
Again, we are talking about how you define success. And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. We've had Melanie on the program, and I really appreciate her and Mojo, both of which have been on. I know Daryl really well. So Daryl is about to come in and give us another perspective. Daryl, what is happening? Thank you so much for coming up.
Hey, Billy. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I was glad to be on your last podcast. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Daryl. You always have a good perspective. What's your thoughts on success?
Well, my thoughts have evolved.
Yes.
I, was born in 72, went to college in the early 90s. My perception of success was I worked in the radio industry, was around a lot of musicians and things like that. I mean, you started to, Alex P. Keaton, Family Ties.
Yeah.
Taught us, it's all about the money. It's all about the cars and the, wealth and all of that kind of stuff. So I always thought, okay, if my business got to be, 7 figures, 8 figures, then yeah, that's success. That's what it kind of looks like. Right.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older and realized that, wait a second, my mother always said that, happiness is an inside job. And you always find out that these people that have made the riches on the outside still lack the happiness on the inside.
Yeah.
And so as I get older and wiser, I sort of realize that, happiness is understanding that we have a beautiful front row seat of what passes through us and becomes blossoming out of us on a day-to-day basis. And when that's in like full on alignment with what our truest potential is, now that to me is success. That is fulfillment and success. I don't think it ever gets old if it's done that way.
That's obviously a great perspective. And like you, I totally agree with you on the evolution of this. I do believe, and I'll ask you this, do you believe most people evolve? Now, I can tell you not all. This is going to sound like a very heartless remark, and forgive me for saying this, but some of the worst people I ever knew were dying sons of bitches. I mean, they were rotten to the very last breath. They talked down to their wives. They made their kids feel inadequate right to the last dying breath. Some people, this idea that we somehow repent and regret things we did on our deathbed is not true. Not everybody dies like that. But I do believe that most people do evolve to become better people. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think energy doesn't judge. I think you can be an a-hole and still be served with energy. It just flows in or it flows out. And if you are somebody that is really good with your intentions and flowing it in a certain way, and it's all about force, you're going to be served. And if you're all about empowering people, you're going to be served. It's just the nature of what we're made of. So I think anything that is judgment is just artificially created by our ignorance.
Exactly. And, you've probably heard me talk before. I talk in a lot of the business groups about a concept called the go-givers, which in short basically says the more value you bring to your business associates, the more that you are going to get back, as opposed to trying to compete with them or try to take a chunk out of them. And, that kind of, in my opinion, that kind of applies to life too. Some of the sayings that you hear in a lot of these spaces, in these business spaces, is that, the easiest path to success, the easiest path to get the things that you want is to help other people get what they want. And that is true. I believe it applies to a lot of things in life. So many times we're so worried about our star not shining, whether it be in social circles or in maybe it be at work or in other organizations. And the fact of the matter is, if you really want your star to shine, help somebody else's star to shine. Because there's a lot of brightness there, and it's not just positive talk. It really does work. I have witnessed it many, many times. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that there's multiple ways. As I learned, there's multiple ways to do life. Like, in our solar system, we have a big old star, right? That's shining bright, and it's like the biggest thing out there. But then you have like gaseous planets, and then you've got rock planets that have molten centers, and you've got moons that rotate around. Like, all of this stuff is part of the solar system that we see. And just like in life, there's going to be many different ways to show up and work in your family and things like that. Sometimes, you're going to be in an orbit around something else. Sometimes you're going to be made of something different than, let's say, a rock solid Earth. Sometimes you're going to be that big flame that lights everybody up when you enter the room, right? We have space that's darkness all over the place. All of us get to play a role in the systems we are in. And like I said, you're going to find what fits best for you and what doesn't. There are certain types of people and certain methodologies of living that definitely triggers me, and that definitely doesn't make me feel very warm and friendly on the inside or happy on the inside. But, that right there is, again, to serve me. It's got to be a way that I can use that to level up who I am and how I interface with the world, so that the next time I encounter that energy or that type of person, right, I'm cultivating a growth from even the things I despise or don't like. And I think that when we can take life that way, life is always in service to us, and happiness is always flowing, because even when you get behind some a-hole at the grocery store, you find a way to make your day instead of ruin it.
Yes, I'm going to have to learn how to do that, because I pick the worst lanes at the grocery store. I'm the guy when I walk into Subway, I say, oh, good, there's only one person ahead of me, right? And I get up to the counter, and this person pulls out a list of sandwiches as long as the Declaration of Independence.
You're supposed to learn patience. Yeah.
It's interesting what you said about the universe, I think, of the solar system in particular, because I believe it's a metaphor for a lot of things. The idea that our world stops at the top of our atmosphere is something that I always stress is not true. We are a part of the universe. We're part of the solar system. The elements that are the highest concentration in our bodies, whether it be carbon and nitrogen, hydrogen, all these things, were forged in the belly of a star. We are part of the entire system. And that's kind of like, I kind of feel that way about our society and our humanity. We are part of the system. It's not just the person who's across the street. We're a part of that. We're a part of the same building blocks. And I kind of feel that, that's a part of humanity. We always, for some reason, and here again, this is me talking, we always have to feel nothing against religion, but we have to bring in this sort of spiritual enforcer. We have to, this spiritual force that we believe in. I have to be good to serve that force. So therefore, I have to be a good person to help my fellow person. I don't think there's anything wrong with believing in spirituality. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I want to be very, very clear. But for me, as a humanitarian, I can kind of feel the oneness that we all share. Here again, talking about the universe and the solar system. The Earth is roughly 4.5. They've been refining it 4.6 billion some odd years old, which means it's gone around the sun, 4.5 billion times. If we are lucky, and we are very lucky, we might get 100 trips around the sun. Most of us won't even get near that. We'll probably be both of us being in the same age group and being equal health. We'll our lifespan is 877, 80, something like that. And that's if we are lucky. A lot of people don't even get that. So if we can recognize that we are here for very few trips around the sun, and really those trips are very short. I mean, you can remember what happened last month. You can remember what happened last year. here very, very easily, correct? Well, like I said, if you're lucky, you only get 70 or 80 times that. That's it. Life is extremely short. It's not just a cliche, it's an understatement. So if we can help our fellow people get as many pleasurable trips around the sun as possible. And sometimes the ailments that come our way we can't control, whether it be illness or what have you. Why do we have to make things so much worse by making life difficult for other people? When I think about the amount of lives and energy that have been wasted on all kinds of things that separate us, and in the end, we're just some really intelligent primates, like Stephen Hawking said, that's sitting on a rock. We're going around the sun. That's it. The rest of the stuff we made up. Okay, our culture, our religions, and all these other things. We're basically just people just trying to have as many pleasant trips around the sun as we can get. And I don't know that my opinion is going to be shared, because I've shared that opinion before and I've gotten hate for it. But that's kind of my view, and I'm kind of getting that from you, that you kind of feel that this is an experience that's really about how certain elements just came together to create a consciousness. That consciousness loves, it feels, it has emotions, and we should be very conscious of that energy that we share with other people. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'd look at the differences between the noble gases of radon versus helium, right? Mm-hmm. And some of the really the difference is one hangs to the floor and the other one is reaching for the stars, right?
Yeah.
And so we show up here and we have all kinds of different scenarios as we grow up. And I don't think we necessarily come here to be radon, but we sort of can become that. We can hang to the floor versus reaching toward the sky. And, I think that it's just natural we have those different gases. It's natural that we have different people that accumulate at the lower vibration. It's just, I think, it's a normal part of the entire process. I'm sure we have weeds, right, that will choke away the healthy plants that are supposed to feed us, right? It's just a natural process in which this entire thing is, the system is. And so, rather than sit and, wallow in judgment or worry or sadness that this is the case, we say, okay, well, let's see. How is it that we could level up the best we can to have it happen the least possible? And we've got our work cut out for us, the way we treat our young people and the way we treat their dreams and their hopes and things like that. The way we, give people some kind of safety net emotionally, and not feeling isolated and things like that. There's just a lot of things I think we can do to kind of reach out each other's hands and sort of help people along the way as best we can. I think we live in the world where it's just like a lot of us don't even know our neighbors anymore. We don't really know, and we don't even call some of our family members, our siblings and things, because we're all so busy and we're all doing these kinds of things. But, if social media was more of a social safety net and sort of let's grab each other by the hand lightly and place a fingerprint into people's lives and sort of bring them along the way, and instead of putting ourselves into a mobile phone as a portal into the synthetic, if we could actually lay hands to touch each other and hold each other's hands, or just like, not to say kumbaya because I'll get criticized for that, but I'm just saying, like, show your care and concern for the other, and be the one that is there for the safety net. If somebody really is lost, say, hey, look, I see you're stepping a little out. Can I help you? Or that kind of thing, and just being there for the fellow brother and sister. And I think that's what we're here for. And I think the world of the digital has made us feel disconnected from that purpose. And I don't think we're really reaching to our highest good to raise overall vibration. And I think we see the result of it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just gets worse as you go.
Daryl, man, you always got some really deep stuff to talk about. If you're in this talk today and you haven't checked out Daryl, please do so. I often jump in some of the stuff you're doing. I don't always participate. Sometimes I just listen. But in the last half minute here, I'll let you say goodbye to everybody. Thank you so much, Daryl. You always bring such value to anything you enter. I really appreciate your comments.
Well, I really try. Billy, you're a great interviewer, and I really appreciate being on your program.
All right. Thank you very much, Daryl. Again, we are talking about how do you define success?
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm very
do you go
well.
by Christine?
Christine Marie. Yes,
Christine Marie. All right, Christine.
And your name is Billy.
Billy's fine.
Billy's fine. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I wanted to come on here and just say hello because I was going through the chats and I came across yours, and I've been listening to you and Daryl talk. Such an amazing talk. I loved it.
Oh, great. Yeah, Daryl's a great person to have a conversation with. So I'll ask you. You obviously were intrigued by the content, and our subject is defining success. And of course, that can mean a lot of different things. What's your kind of take on it? What brings you fulfillment?
Well, to me, defining success is how I treat other people. And I mean, that's what really caught me with your and Daryl's talk. Like you said something along the lines of, why do we want to make things worse on each other? Because life it's hard enough all by itself without somebody coming along and, just making things really bad because they've got a bad attitude or having a bad day. I used to be that person. Mm-hmm. I used to be that person. And the reason, for me, was because I didn't like who I was. And so until I came to grips with my problem with myself, that's when things started changing for me. Okay. So it became, how do I treat other people, even, when they're having a bad day or they're having a hard time? That's how I define it.
You are so right. I mean, in terms of, you're right across the board. I do believe that how we treat other people is very much a big gauge in success. But a lot of times we have to turn that inward. And, we've heard the cliches before, when a plane is going down, you got to put the oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else, or you can't help other people. But it is really true that a lot of times how our ability to help other people and our ability to be a light is very much dependent on our own wellness, very much important in terms of how we view ourselves. We have to view ourselves as a leader. We have to view ourselves as a light in someone's life. And so you say you used to be that person. How did that journey change for you?
I had to take a look in the mirror because I kept pushing people out of my life, my family and my friends, because my attitude was just so bad. And I didn't understand why I had these people who loved me. They were leaving. They were distancing themselves from me. It's like really easy to, let's see, how do I put this? It's real easy to point the finger at somebody else, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's real easy to say, well, it's their fault, but it wasn't their fault. I had to take a look in the mirror into who I was and what I was doing wrong and the things that I had allowed into my life and into my environment that were making me unhappy. So instead of dealing with the things in my environment that were making me unhappy, I lashed out at the people around me.
Yes.
Because that was the easier thing to do. It was easier for me to lash out at my friend or my family members than it was for me to go to the mirror and take a good long look at myself.
That is correct. It is hard to do that. I think self-examination is probably one of the most difficult things to do because as much as we try to be objective with ourselves, sometimes it's difficult to do that. But I'll tell you, no matter what your journey is in life, and I don't know if you heard the earlier part of the conversation, but I'm involved in the mental health community and a lot of other communities. And regardless of what kind of self-improvement you're going through, whether it be a recovery journey or whether it be just your journey to become a better person, whatever it may be, not necessarily something as dramatic as a mental issue, but just becoming a better person. One of the key things, and you can't really teach somebody to do this, is they have to be aware that there is a problem. They have to be aware that there is a need. And until that day comes, it's very hard for other people to help people be good people. You have to have that inward sense of, I can be better. There's a way for me to be better. And that's a very, very hard thing to show somebody. It's got to come from within. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah. One of the first things that came to my mind when you said that, and it was something my mom had said to me, admitting that I have a problem is half the battle right there.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that allows me to find a solution to the problem.
Yes. You can find a path if you know your destination is where it is. I have to be better. I have to be there. So then at that point, you can carve out a path to get to that. And a lot of times, and quite frankly, if you're familiar with the psychology of addiction and other things, a lot of times part of the disease is that you're in denial. So that's why a lot of times those kinds of individuals are very hard to reach. But it applies to more subtle things, even if it's like we were talking about in this talk before. Just having an awareness as we get older that there is a need to help other people. That success sometimes is more than just making money. Sometimes that awareness, that little light, so to speak, doesn't go off in certain people. It just doesn't. They live their whole lives driven by their own self desires. And like I mentioned earlier, you can point somebody in the right direction. You can do that, but it's either there or it isn't. And so that's a tough one. I wish there were more people that recognize that they could improve not only themselves, but by doing so, they improve the lives of the people around them. And for all the high talk we have of social media, supposedly being able to do great things, it sometimes doesn't, because like we were talking earlier, it feeds the bubbles. We follow people that we like. We follow news sources that we like, which do nothing but reinforce what we already believe about the world and ourselves. Right. And it takes a lot of courage. And I would say, I know a lot of people are going to resist me on this, but listen to people that you don't necessarily agree with once in a while. Listen to them a lot. Because if you give them a chance, you might find out that they do move the needle on you. And sometimes there's a wider truth than the one that you feel comfortable with. And that's all about helping other people. That's all about having them validating their journey as well. Their journey is just as valid as yours. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, yeah, because it wasn't until my friend called me out. She had the guts enough to get up and call me out. And I didn't like what she had to say. I didn't like what she was telling me, but she was telling me the truth. She was being honest with me. So I didn't like that. But I think that was one of the first things that got me to move in a direction to help myself. No, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And it's also a point of active listening. Because I heard you talk about listening earlier. We got to listen.
Yes.
And they say you listen to respond or you listen to understand.
Yes.
And I try to listen to understand, not listen so much to respond.
That's absolutely true. So many times, even in a private conversation with just one other person, we're listening to them and we're crafting how we are going to respond. Well, I'm going to tell them this and I'm going to tell them that.
Yeah.
And instead of recognizing their truth and that listening in that way, I'm going to say is a lost art for a lot of people. And here again, getting back to social audio, that's one of the things. There's a lot of people in this room. I wish they would be more, encouraged to come up and speak a lot of times, because sometimes they don't. But I also respect the fact that they are here to listen. And that is very important. I spend most of my time on social audio listening. You'll hear a lot of things beyond the words that people are saying if you really, really listen to their truth. You have about another 5 minutes left. You don't have to stay for the whole 5 minutes. If you'd like to step out, you can. But I would like to thank you for coming on. And would you like to
you're welcome.
Use the last maybe couple of minutes? Do you host Wisdom Talks yourself, or?
I do. I'll just give a little introduction of myself.
Absolutely.
Like I said,
ahead.
my name's Christine Marie. I do a podcast. It's on Anchor, and then I also host talks here. I'm known to some people on here. I'm the storm chaser. I storm chase. I've been doing that for between 24 and 26 years. I can't do the math. I've been doing it since I was 16 years old.
Really?
I love meeting new people. That is my jam. Meeting new people.
So when you say you're a storm chaser, you mean like the tornadoes and stuff?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have been doing that since I was 16 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what area of the world are you in? Are you like from Kansas? That would be a good place to be doing that.
Well, I've been up to Kansas, but I live in Texas.
Well, they got some pretty serious storms down there too.
Yeah. Well, this year it's been kind of, it hasn't been really active this year at all.
Well, that's kind of a good thing, because they really got nailed in Florida. That's nuts what happened down there. And, I got to tell you, I've never been to Florida. I've been close. I've been close to the border, and I've been obviously in Georgia and places like that. And the heat is really sticky hot where I was. And I've been told it's even worse down to the southern part of Florida. I'm not sure I would want to be in that part of the world, but even if I was, just the threat that everything gets wiped out every few years, I'm not so sure.
It's crazy because, I'll tell people who they got a bigger than life attitude. And I'm like, look, there's always something bigger than you.
Yeah. And
I'm going to tell you now, Mother Nature is way bigger than you are, because things change in the blink of an eye. I mean, we watched Greensburg, Kansas get wiped off the map.
Yeah.
It's just like Florida, only it was a bigger form of a tornado. I mean, that's what a hurricane is.
Sure.
It's like a real huge tornado.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a couple minutes left. I got to ask you this. I have a buddy, and he used to have one of those great big Ford, like F-350 type things, one of those big heavy trucks, right? Uh-huh. And Ohio, we can get some pretty bad tornadoes here. There's been a couple of bad ones that were of historic proportions. But what I was getting at was he was in one. I was trying to flee one, and that big truck that he had, he felt the back end lift off the ground. And he was in his truck, and I've always been told, don't stay in your vehicle if you can't help it. That's probably good advice, because as big as his truck was, he felt the back end come completely off the ground. And he told me, he said, well, I said to myself, this is how it's going to end. It's not funny, but he told himself, this is how it's going to end. Now, as it turns out, he didn't get hurt. His truck got a little banged up and stuff, but he wasn't badly hurt. Have you been in a situation like that? Have you been in a situation like where, well, this is bad. Maybe I'm a little too close.
Yeah, we were on a storm on the Oklahoma Panhandle, Kansas border, and there was an F5 tornado. And my driver, he's like, well, do I stop or do I keep going? Okay, well, foolish me told him to keep going. And it got a little hairy. It got scary, and we bailed out of the vehicle and hit the ditch because we were safer in the ditch than we were in that vehicle.
Yeah. That's my understanding. And, like I said, I've been pretty lucky living here. Iowa is not notorious for tornadoes, but we've had some, like the one in Xenia and a few others. That's one of the ones that they say is one of the worst. And I always have a lot of respect for the storms. We have the tornado warning sirens here, just like a lot of other places do. When you hear those go off, one time over the summer, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was about 2:00 in the morning. My window was open. I heard that siren going off and our electric was off. And it was a real eerie feeling hearing that siren go off in pitch darkness in the neighborhood. I thought, boy, here it comes. As it turns out, nothing happened. But that can be scary. Christina.
Oh, especially at night because you can't see what's coming.
Yeah, you can't see it. It's going to suck you up at any moment.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely follow you and I will come back on and visit with you at another time. But I really enjoyed talking to you.
I enjoyed talking to you, and I'll definitely have to be checking out some of your wisdom talks. Thank you so much for coming on the chat today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Interesting stuff today in terms of philosophy about how you define success, because that can mean so many different things. And you know what's interesting is through the talk today, naturally I want to be clear. Money is important. You know, this idea that money can't buy happiness, that's not exactly true. I mean, to me, money can buy a lot of happiness in terms of not having to worry about your medical bills, not having to worry about the roof over your head. Just living a life, not necessarily of luxury, but with your basic necessities, not having to be a worry. I don't subscribe to the notion that money can't buy happiness because it can buy that. It can buy security, which is very important for your wellness. However, the cliches are true. Once you go north of a certain amount, there's only so much that money can do for you in terms of happiness. So your success has to be gauged in more ways than just being a good provider. And I'm really impressed with everybody that came up and shared their points today, because there were some really, really great points brought up. So fair amount of people in the space. I see a lot of people in here that I don't know. Feel free to reach out sometime if you like. I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time. And I want to say I appreciate the privilege of having your attention over the last hour and a half. That means a lot to me that you've given that time to share in these ideas. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm going to end the talk right now, but thank you so much. You can find me on Twitter if you happen to be on Twitter @BillyDees. Hop onto Twitter and tweet me, say hello. Thank you so much for listening to us today, and I will talk to you again very soon.